is your Filipino radio experience in Las Vegas. PHLV Radio. PHLV Radio.
It's time to get real. Get real. Talking about the things you wanna hear. It's time to get real. Get real. We got it all right here. It's time to get real. Get real. Better buckle up, get set. It's time to get real. Get real. We got it all right here. Come on.
All right. Good evening, New York City. Of course, good afternoon, Las Vegas, and of course, good morning, Philippines. Another week has passed, and this is Jeanette again with you for another exciting episode of Get Real TV. Maraming salamat po sa inyo at let me see if I can get some people who are tuned in early because we have a very special guest and I think they're also expecting to see a very, very special guest. I hope everyone's doing well, especially there in the Philippines. I think they've already taken out the what do you call this? Curfew. So a lot more people are going outside. Meanwhile, I hope you guys are still staying safe. You know, social distancing is a must. And if you can, please try to wear your face mask. And wherever you guys are, know that there are a lot of things happening going around the world. And kung ano man po ang nararamdaman natin ngayon, life is beautiful just the same. So tonight is very special if I can remember. When I had my very first episode here in Get Real alongside with, of course, Mr. Luis Pedron. He was our first guest. And of course, 6 years down the line, I am bringing him back because something special is happening again to him where he is currently right now. So right now, Mr. Josh Price was born in Southwest Arkansas, the son of small business owner and a nurse, of course. I met both of them. He grew up in Delight in a family with deep Arkansas roots and commitment to public service. Josh is nationally recognized for his work on running smooth and fair election, something that we actually need in the Philippines. Josh served as an election commissioner for Pulaski County, helping oversee Arkansas's largest county election. In his role, Josh expanded voter access by opening additional early voting locations, replacing a 20-year-old, a lot of their voting machines that had been there for 20 years. Oh, my God. And personally recruiting and training hundreds of poll workers during the pandemic recently. Josh received a national award for his work protecting voting rights. We'll discuss that later. Josh recently worked at the U.S. Small Business Administration, where he served Public Information Officer for Arkansas, helping thousands of small businesses during the pandemic economic slowdown. Josh also previously served as the Digital Communications Director and Policy Advisor for Delta Regional Authority, an independent federal agency, where he oversaw outreach to 10 million Americans and worked with governors in an 8-state region to help grow local economies and improve lives of the citizens of the Mississippi River Delta. Wow. A long board member of several nonprofit organizations, Josh is passionate about working in the community where he currently resides in Momo. Before I personally introduce, let us play the video. Direct Johan.
I grew up in Delight, population about 300. If you've heard of Delight, it's because Glenn Campbell grew up here. We had a creek we swam in, a gravel pit for sliding down in cardboard boxes. And for special occasions, we'd head up to the Western Sizzlin in the big city of Arkadelphia. One of the benefits of being from a place that small is that you know everybody. Literally everybody. My grandpa fought in World War II and was awarded the Purple Heart. My Granny Jean was the first woman to serve as Justice of the Peace in Pike County. She fought for civil rights in the 50s and 60s. My dad owned and operated the grocery store in town. My mom was recruited to come over from the Philippines to work as a nurse in Murfreesboro. Funny enough, it was my Granny Jean who introduced my parents. They got married, and then I came along. When you're from a small town in Arkansas, that's always a big part of who you are. As part of senior leadership for the Delta Regional Authority, I help create jobs and grow the economies in small towns along the Mississippi River. During the pandemic, I helped small businesses find ways to survive. I've served as a Pulaski County Election Commissioner. I know what it takes to run large elections smoothly and fairly. Now, I'm running for Secretary of State to protect our voting rights. Sadly, out-of-touch politicians are making it harder for people to vote. And that's just not right. Rural voters, seniors, single mothers, working-class Arkansans, they're all facing new hurdles to exercising their American right to vote. As Secretary of State, I will fight to protect the fundamental right of every Arkansan to make their voices heard. Whether they live in a big city or a small town like Delight, I'm Josh Price, and I want to earn your support to be your next Secretary of State.
All right, the future Secretary of State in Arkansas, of course, one of our board directors for the Basilia Women's Foundation, who had helped immensely build out our foundation for the battered and abused women and children. No less than a very good friend of mine. Let us welcome, for the second time around, Mr. Joshua Price.
Hi, Jeanette. Mabuhay. Thank you so much for having me. I miss you.
I know, I miss you. It's been years and I haven't seen you. The last time we've seen each other was during your campaign, you know, when we were trying to raise funds for your previous post that you wanted to run. And now here in a bigger post as as Secretary of State, Josh, first of all, let me thank you. I know with this kind of job that you're currently having campaigning, I know you are very busy with your schedule. Thank you so much for giving way for this. But please, please give a few minutes of yourself to introduce to the people who are currently watching both locally here in the United States and of course in the Philippines.
Absolutely. Well, walang anuman. Thank you for having me today. My name is Joshua Ang Price. I am originally from, as it said in the video, a small town called Delight, not Delight, Delight.
Delight.
With a hearty. And my father is a small business owner from Delight. My mom is a nurse from Rojas City Capiz in the Philippines. And she was recruited to come to the United States, as many nurses were in the 70s, to work in rural parts of America. And honestly, I think you and your viewers will be able to sympathize with this and connect. But my mom's story, her immigration story, is really central to me running for this position of Secretary of State. My mom has told me how in the Philippines during the Marcos administration, there was a lack of voting access. There was a lack of ability to have freedom of speech. She remembers martial law. She remembers, no newspapers, very few TV stations. And when we had, the insurrection here in the United States and all the political issues we had last year, and as well as the suppression of voting rights, my mom turned to me and she said, Josh, I saw this happen in the Philippines and I never thought I'd see it happen here.
Oh my God. You actually raised me to that question, why voting rights? So right. There goes the question.
Well, I read your mind.
To my question. Right.
But after she said that, Jeanette, it really touched me. It really it really affected me. It was like a punch to my chest. I mean, here's someone, my mother, who came to this country at age 25 by herself, didn't know anybody, left behind her friends, her family, to come to a country where she knew that her future children would have freedom, the freedom to vote and the freedom to speak their mind and have representation. And for her to say that to me and feel like America was going down a dark path, something very similar to what happened before, it really affected me. And I told her, I said, Mom, Nanay, I promise to you that I'm not going to let this happen in Arkansas. Right. I'm not. I said, just not only for you, but for all the people of our state. And I intend to keep that promise as Secretary of State.
So, Josh, let's try to backtrack
sure.
Before we get to you running as Secretary of State. You were born and raised in Arkansas. Is that right?
Right. That's correct. Mm-hmm.
And growing up in a community or in a state where there is, I don't know how many Filipinos are residing over there. How was it growing up?
There's about 8,000 Filipinos in Arkansas, 8 to 10,000. I don't know how accurate the census data is. Sometimes Filipinos are not good at filling out the census, so we're not quite sure. But
Right.
no, it was okay. I was definitely the only. My mom, my sister, and I were the only Filipinos in town, the only Filipinos probably in the county. And I would say I was more of an oddity. People were curious about me, but I never really felt any type of negative, or biased emotions or racism or anything like that. It was more just curiosity. It was more than just curiosity. And as we moved to larger cities and we moved up the freeway to Arkadelphia and Hot Springs and finally Little Rock, oddly enough, I started experiencing more racism when I was in the bigger city of Little Rock. I think it's because when you're in a small
Right.
town, everybody knows everybody. So everybody knew
Uh-huh.
who my mom was, everyone knew who my dad was, and it wasn't an issue. But when you live in a bigger city, you can kind of pick and choose who you want to spend time with
Right.
and who you want to interact with. So I actually encountered more of the racism when I moved to Little Rock, unfortunately.
Oh my God. How many years did you guys spend in Little Rock?
Yeah, I've lived in Little Rock since 1991. And, there's been a couple things I remember one instance when I was in fifth grade, all the kids decided to get around me in a circle at recess and say, go back to where you came from. You don't belong here. We don't want you here. So that was not the best. That was hurtful. And then, of course, in high school, we had some issues with, I don't know how much I can say on your show. You might want to censor things, but
No, it's okay.
we had some, I had some classmates ask me if my mother was, I hate to say this, but this is what they said. They asked me if my mother was a prostitute from the Philippines who
Oh, wow.
who married an American soldier. So there's definitely some racism there. But at the same time, there's also, on the flip side, there was a lot of acceptance and people that were very kind to me and supportive. So, it takes all kinds, two sides to every coin.
Of course, exactly. And how did you get by, during that time when you were little or when you were younger, handling that kind, when somebody tells you, well, you get a different kind of biased opinion about your mom, but some people would always relate to Filipinos being domestic helpers in the
Right.
United States, marrying Americans, or anybody who doesn't have papers would end up marrying an American. But that was something heavy, relatively heavy for a young boy or a teenager growing up in that city. So how did you manage that?
Well, really, just talking to my mother and father about it. I mean, they always instilled in myself and my sister to be strong and to be tough and not let other people's opinions affect us. And my mom always told me growing up from a very young age, the first time I entered kindergarten, she said, Josh, you're going to experience racism at times and people questioning you. So what you have to do is you have to work twice as hard as everyone else, be twice as smart, get really good grades, speak perfect English, all of those things, so that so that
Speak
nobody will have
perfect
anything
English
to say.
with the twang of
That's right,
Arkansas, the y'all. So
y'all. That's
anyway,
right.
so Josh, someone was asking if you are Ilonggo.
Yes, I am Ilonggo, and
It's
I speak.
Ilongga.
I do, and I speak Ilonggo fluently, and that's one of the things that my mother instilled in me. And I'm so blessed that my mother was very strict. She would tell us when we got home from school, she'd say, "You've been speaking English all day. You've been watching English on television all day. Now that you're back at home, it's Ilonggo only." So we would only speak Ilonggo once we got back into the house.
You know what? There are a lot of Ilonggo or people from the south region of the Philippines watching right now. You may want to greet them in your dialect.
Oh, I don't know what to say. It's when you put someone on the spot. My Ilonggo was very conversational, so someone just said, "Just say something." I never know what to say.
Just say something like greet them good morning or good evening in your dialect.
Well, it's still the same. It's magandang umaga or magandang gabi. But I'm just so thankful to be here. Yeah, maraming salamat po. Thank you for having me on the show. How about this? Kagwapa, kagkamaalam si Jeanette Marco.
That was really fun. So, Josh, I am reading a lot of some comments here that knowing that films do great things in every corner of the world. That is actually one message coming from my co-host from one of my shows in Channel One Global. Just to let the message across, send that to you, and it's something that you should be. You're actually proud of being Filipino, and everyone else is actually proud of you. But Josh, I just actually read in your bio that you helped raise 8.8 million in grants to advance STEM education in your county. So could you please share to us what was that?
Yeah, so I was working at Pulaski Tech, or University of Arkansas Pulaski Technical College, which is one of the largest two-year colleges in Arkansas. And I was actually serving on the board at the time, and our director of development had retired, and I had been working with the director of development on some different grants. And without a director of development, those grants had kind of just become stagnant. So I jumped in and I worked there for 10 months as the director of development, and helped apply for different grants through the Economic Development Administration and different state and federal agencies, the Department of Education, as well as through the CARES Act when coronavirus hit. And total raised about $8.8 million in grants within about a year period. So that was a great accomplishment for the college, and would really help with STEM education and just general education to get people in fields like medicine, not becoming a doctor, but allied health, different types of medical support staff, welding, computer science, and all those things. So it was definitely a blessing to me to be able to be in that position.
Well, congratulations. So you've been doing a lot. I've been to Little Rock. I've been around, and everybody knows you, and everybody's like, embracing you and loving you over there. And that is the reason actually why everyone in Arkansas or Little Rock at least would love you for that matter. But Josh, you being a champion speaker, always relating to, Asian hate, and being a sought after speaker over there because of course, you being a Filipino and of course, an American dad, how did you actually spread those experiences, and how did you actually send that message across to people over there?
Well, that's a good question. And I will say that a lot of times Asian American communities and Filipino American communities in general tend to be a little bit of a hidden community. We come over to the United States like my mom did, leaving behind, political instability, and people come from China or Japan or Vietnam, whatever country, for the same reasons. And you come to the United States and you think, oh, goodness, I have freedom of speech. I have freedom to vote. I'm being left alone. I'm not being persecuted. I'm just going to work hard and keep my head down and focus on, myself and my family. And that's great. That's awesome. But at the same time, Asian Americans and Filipino Americans, we are very, we're providing a lot to our local society, right? We're providing a lot of contributions. We are definitely an asset, hardworking, educated, focused on education. So it's been such a focus of mine to make sure that Asian Americans and Filipino Americans specifically get involved in our democracy, get involved in government, get involved in civic organizations, get involved in nonprofits, and just be seen, and to show people that we are not a hidden community. We're here, and we bring a lot to the table, and we are contributing a lot to society. So please see us, and we also deserve to have a voice at the table, and we deserve representation.
Exactly. We deserve to be heard, and we deserve to have representation on, even when in the United Nations, whenever we are doing, conferences and conventions, they would always, all the Asian people would gather and say that we need to have a seat on the table to actually have a voice. Now, Josh,
That's right.
with your current position right now, and you're running as Secretary of State, and you being piloting or spearheading, voters' rights. Let us discuss this deeply in details, because this is actually what part of your platform is all about. Having voters' rights and be able to actually have a clean, smooth election.
That's
First,
right.
why the voting rights? Of course, when we segue earlier on that your mom's experience, and how did you actually get to this?
That's a good question. So yes, as you mentioned earlier, I had run for state representative in 2018. I did not win. However, that experience was very educational for me and showed me what to do and what not to do. And then after that, I was given the opportunity to run for election commissioner for Pulaski County, which again, like you said, is the largest county in Arkansas with about 400,000 residents. So I was elected to be election commissioner by the Democratic Party of Arkansas, or the Democratic Party of Pulaski County, excuse me. And I served on the election commission from February of 2019 until just recently at the end of May of this year, when I resigned to run for Secretary of State. But during my time on the election commission, and I will try to keep this nonpartisan, but let's just say I saw things.
Okay.
I saw things that I didn't like. I saw votes being suppressed, especially during the pandemic when a lot of people were voting by mail. We ended up having 25,000 mail-in ballots or absentee ballots in the last election, when normally in Pulaski County it's about 6,000, so quite a bit more. And I saw ballots being rejected for things like missing an apartment number, or missing a zip code, or an 85-year-old woman who had a stroke and provided a letter from her doctor and a letter from her husband explaining her situation and her medical condition, letters that were notarized, but her ballot was still thrown out. I've seen people sign, instead of Joshua Price, they signed J Price, and their ballots were rejected. And to see that kind of careless rejection of ballots, it really upset me, to be honest. I took that position very seriously, that I am protecting our sacred constitutional American right to vote, which goes beyond Democrat or Republican. This is a sacred right as Americans. This is what our ancestors, whether white or black or Asian or Hispanic or Latinx, we all fought for, to have these civil rights to vote. Even the folks that first left from Europe and founded the United States, they left because they didn't want to be ruled over by a monarchy or a dictatorship. They wanted to be able to elect their own leaders, people that are going to represent them and their community and the issues they care about. So to see these votes just kind of thrown out very carelessly, it really bothered me, because the way I felt is that every vote was sacred. Every vote is someone's hopes and dreams. Why do we vote? We vote for a better future. So that really bothered me. And kind of after seeing behind the curtain and seeing how things were done, I really thought to myself, how can I sleep at night knowing what I know now if I don't get out there and fight to protect the voting rights of Arkansans who don't know that their vote may be thrown out for these simple human errors? So that is why I'm running for Secretary of State, to protect the voting rights of all Arkansans and make sure that every voice is heard, because every voice deserves to be heard.
Okay. For the benefit of our viewers who are currently in the Philippines, who are not familiar with our political hierarchy or our positions and posts, what does a Secretary of State do?
So the Secretary of State is the chief elections officer for the state of Arkansas. So the primary job is to oversee all elections. So there are 75 counties in Arkansas, and each county has a board of election commissioners comprised of 3 members, 2 members from the majority party and 1 member from the minority party. So in Arkansas, that means 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat. And I was the sole Democrat on the election commission in Pulaski County. So the election commissioners from each county are the ones that oversee the elections for their county. And then after they've compiled all the winners, they send all that information to the Secretary of State, who makes the final certification for all the elections in the state of Arkansas. The Secretary of State also provides guidance to all 75 counties to make sure that the process is standard across all 75 counties, that it's not easier to vote in one county, harder to vote in another, or more difficult in one county, or more convenient in one county, and then more prohibitive in another county. It should be the same voter experience across the whole state. The Secretary of State provides training to the poll workers, training to the election commissioners, training to the staff to make sure that elections are run fairly and smoothly and safely and are accessible to everybody. That is the primary job. Mm-hmm.
That is the primary job of the Secretary of State. Now, while there might be a lot more bigger people running for posts, Josh, this is a very hard job for you to actually oversee something when you are already the Secretary of State. I know that you will win this, and from my mouth to God's ears, I know you will be blessed with that because I know you've been dreaming of serving your people in Arkansas. But if ever you get elected for the post, how do you plan to actually keep a safe environment for the voters and making sure and ensuring that voters' rights are exerted and none of these ballots will be, put down a drain, or no such influence from any political party or any person running for that matter will take place?
That's a great question. So I am a Democrat. However, I believe that elections should be nonpartisan. I always say voting is not a Democrat or Republican issue. It's a sacred constitutional American right. And before the United States had Democratic Party and Republican Party, there were other parties. There was the Federalist Party and the Whigs. It doesn't matter. Parties come and go, they rise and fall. But at the end of the day, what's important is to protect that process of voting, that process of electing our own leaders and protecting that American right to vote. That is the number one sacred process that we have to protect at all costs, because if we don't have that, we don't have anything else.
Right. It takes out the life and the dreams of everyone else.
That's right.
In your country or wherever you are. And that is actually one thing that maybe you should, after fixing everything there in Arkansas, maybe you should go back to the Philippines and train people to have a fair
election.
And just election, just to make sure that we elect this time the best of the best from the candidates running over, because we need somebody like you to actually oversee something over there that is fairly unbiased, and non-partisan. But Josh, this is quite a big job for you, because whoever leaders that will be elected will start from you and from the hard work that you do. How do you manage your life right now, your personal life, your family life, and whatever it is that you're doing right now campaigning?
Well, I will say that running for statewide office is not easy. I had to leave my position. I worked for the U.S. Small Business Administration. I was the public information officer for the state of Arkansas, like you had mentioned. And it was my job to let people know, small businesses and nonprofits across the state, know what kind of federal resources were available during the pandemic, from a Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP, to economic injury disaster loans, to restaurant revitalization fund, to shuttered venues operators grants. There's all kinds of federal dollars that were out there. And it was my job to let the businesses know. And I really enjoyed it. It was great. And actually, it really prepared me for this position as well, because the second job responsibility of the Secretary of State is the registration of nonprofits and small businesses. So I know that in this role, because I have the knowledge of the federal government and what kind of resources and grants and money is out there, that when new businesses register, I can guide them towards what kind of funding is available for them, because there's federal funding for women-owned small businesses, minority-owned small businesses, rural businesses, seniors, veterans, LGBTQ. There's all these pots of federal money, but a lot of the small businesses and nonprofits in Arkansas don't know that they can access that money. They don't even know what website to go to or how to fill out the application. So that's something as Secretary of State I can also, in a secondary role after elections, I can also help with. But I had to leave that job at the U.S. Small Business Administration. So I am all in. I am campaigning full time. I am traveling across the state 3 to 4 days a week. Arkansas has 75 counties. I've already been to, I believe, 25 or 26 counties. And just talking to people, talking to voters and listening to their concerns and what they want to see happen in our state. And I will say that the number one concern is the protection of our voting rights and making sure that everybody can get to the polls and vote. Arkansas, sadly, is dead last in the United States in voter registration and dead last in voter turnout. Half of Arkansans are not voting at all. 1.2 million Arkansans voted in the last election. 1.1 million did not vote. So there's a lot of room for improvement. And I think Arkansas deserves a lot better. It is. And as Secretary of State, I can promote the elections. I can inform people as to what's going on. I can do PSAs. I can be on the morning shows. I can do all those things to let people know how to vote, where to vote, when to vote, so they can make sure that they're represented and their voice is heard.
Well, that is something noble and something for you to do in Arkansas. And I know that a lot of people are now, more and more people are now relying on you to actually have a good kickoff start, before the elections will start. Josh, with that chunk of things that you are trying to take care of or you to partake, is there a bigger number of Filipinos stepping out, coming to you now that they know that they have somebody in Arkansas that they can rely on?
Yes, actually there are. And I've met many Filipinos in my travels across the state who are so thankful that I'm running. And they tell me, they said, I've never seen anyone on TV that looks like me. I've never seen anybody running for office that looks like me. Arkansas has never elected a person of color to statewide office, whether that's Black, Hispanic, Latinx, or Asian American. They have never elected someone of color to Congress. And we have never had an Asian American or Pacific Islander elected official on the state level or above, just on the county level or city level. So it's definitely very humbling to know that people are seeing me and are thankful and looking up to me and hopefully inspiring them to run for office too. I would love to be a foot in the door to see more Filipino Americans get involved in local leadership.
Exactly. I'm really very sure that with you setting this example and putting your foot on the door, being in a statewide office, they'll have more courage to actually step up and get out. But Josh, as a Filipino, of course, even if you're an American, if you sound Arkansas, if you sound and you look very much American, I know that there's a huge part of you that is very Filipino. How do you actually embrace heritage and culture right now that you have lived most of your life in the United States and in Arkansas?
Yeah, I try to stay as active in the Filipino community and the Asian American community as I can. I was one of the co-founders of the Asian American Pacific Islander Democratic Caucus of Arkansas. We founded that 5 years ago, and I was elected as its first president. And then I was also part of the Philippine Young Leaders Program, or PhilPro, which was a partnership with the Ayala Foundation and the Philippine Embassy. I went through that program in 2018 and went on an immersion trip to Manila. And then I was elected as the alumni vice president in 2019 and the alumni president in 2020. So during my presidency with PhilPro, we know that frontline workers that are Filipino were affected tremendously by the pandemic. I think 31% of nurses who actually ended up sadly passing away during the pandemic were of Filipino descent. So it was very important to me that we showed support to the Filipino American community. So during my time at Philpro as president, we raised tens of thousands of dollars for personal protective equipment, for food, for masks, for hand sanitizer. And we made sure that we were distributing those to Filipino American communities in California and New York and all across the country, as well as in the Philippines. And we did feeding programs, and we partnered with local nonprofits. So it was a great experience because being Filipino is very much a core of who I am. Even when I'm running all over the state, how do I say in Ilonggo? Permi ko nagapinakatu pakari. So I'm running around all over the state, left and right. But as I do, I'm, whether consciously or subconsciously, I am sharing about my Filipino culture. And this is something that was very moving to me and I'm very proud of. There's a county in Arkansas, Pope County, Russellville. I'm going to give a shout out to Pope County. I'm going to actually be in their Veterans Day parade on Thursday, but Pope County made a post for Filipino American Heritage Month or Filipino American History Month and said, wow, one of our statewide candidates, Joshua Ang Price, is Filipino American. Did you know that October is Filipino American History Month? And they made a whole post about it on their Facebook. And that may seem like something small, but to me, it was so touching that as I travel across the state, counties are realizing that I am Filipino American and they're being supportive to the point where they are sharing information about Filipino American History Month. So that was very touching to me because it's creating awareness and even, like I said, subconsciously or unconsciously, I am helping increase that awareness that Filipino Americans are here and that we are valuable members of society.
Wow. So tell me your experience. I know because I was actually talking to you and being updating with what you've been doing in the Philippines when you actually flew there. How was was that the first time you've been to the Philippines?
No, it wasn't my first time. I had been to the Philippines when I was a child several times. When I was first born, my mom took me to the Philippines to meet all my family. And then when my sister was born, she took us back again. And then I had been there as a teenager, but I had not been to the Philippines in 21 years. So in 2018, that's the first time with Philpro. That's the first time I'd been to the Philippines in 21 years. But it was an amazing experience to be able to see the Philippines through the eyes of an adult and not have my family with me. And it doesn't feel like a vacation. Like we're there to actually be immersed and learn about the culture. And to be honest, I felt like that was the missing piece. That was the missing piece. And knowing where you came from, you have to know where you came from to know where you're going. And it really did create a sense of confidence in me to know that I come from such a beautiful and amazing and proud culture in the Philippines. It was that missing piece of the puzzle that really helped me understand who I am and where I come from and really just define who I am because it's an important part of who I am.
Exactly. I'm pretty sure that you had a really fun time, but let me ask you a very funny question. Did you actually even try to eat some of our street foods over there, or you didn't dare touch it?
No, yeah, I ate everything. I am not scared. I ate everything. And you know what I love? My favorite is bibingka. That is my favorite.
Oh,
Bibingka.
wow.
Mm-hmm.
Bibingka. Well, actually, I let me take this chance to actually read some of the comments that are actually posted there. They would say that if you were running in Washington State, they would vote for you. And
Thank you.
they are really very proud that, there are Filipinos working over there. That's Miss Feli Alfen. And of course, Annalie Candesa, of course, our super friends are there watching. Lens Kinel, Mr. Tyler Durathim, Rafael Rojo Dinglas, and of course from the Philippines. We're actually there, I think, Mr. Venanaya and a lot more. Bebing Aranyador. Oh, and they are from Dubai. So they're
Maraming
Ilongga.
salamat po. Thank you so much.
They are also Ilongga. So, maayong gabi. So they're very proud, about you. And of course, Marilu Doliente, who is currently in San Francisco. But Josh, on a lighter side, is Mr. Joshua Ang Price still single? Because people are asking.
I will just say that I am married to my work.
Oh my God! So that's already hopeless. Were you really walking down the aisle, because you will be the moment that you will be the Secretary of State that will go, different levels up, holding higher positions because of the great job that you do.
Well, we'll see what happens. You're making me blush.
I've always asked you that, that. So they are hoping that you visit Washington State one day. So we are also hoping that, a lot more Filipinos would do the same like you, hang on to the heritage, the culture of being Filipino and being an American at the same time, or even, wherever they are, whether they're in the United States, in Europe, or wherever, which part of the world they are. I know that we Filipinos excel in a lot of, things. And of course, being in politics is something else. To be able to achieve that, Josh, it needs, hard work from the grassroots going up. And with what you've built, I know for sure that you will get the Secretary of State position. Josh, before I close this episode with you, let me thank you, of course, for all the support that you have, of course, for our foundation, Basili Women's Foundation. You've been one of the core support directors of the foundation. Even there in Arkansas, I remember, flying there, doing fashion shows because it supports, Suicide Prevention Month and a lot of things that you do best with passion. Take this opportunity because there might be a lot of people from Arkansas who will watch this, of course, after sharing this. Take this opportunity to share the wholeness or the piece of you for the people that you are running for the Secretary of State.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to say to you, palangga ko ikaw nga madamo. I love you very much. Thank you for being such a wonderful friend. But no, Arkansans deserve the right to have their voices heard. And as Secretary of State, that's what I want to do. I don't need to go on a long political spiel. At the end of the day, all Americans have the right to vote. All Arkansans have the right to vote. They should not be prohibited from voting. It should not be harder for them to vote. If you are an American citizen and you are able to vote, you should have that opportunity. And there shouldn't be extra hoops for people to jump through. We shouldn't make it harder to vote for seniors, for people with disabilities, for people who have medical conditions, who maybe their signature doesn't look the same way anymore. We need to show kindness and compassion, and we need to always side with the voter as much as possible. Nobody wants voter fraud. I know we talk about voter fraud a lot in this country, but Arkansas has only had 3 cases of voter fraud in 20 years. So you actually have a better chance of being struck by lightning than finding voter fraud in Arkansas. So at the end of the day, I think that we should let people vote and let the cards fall where they may, because that's the American way. And one thing I want to do as Secretary of State, above all else, is protect that fundamental American right to vote, because our democracy is so precious. And like what happened in the Philippines, your democracy can be gone that fast. Snap of your fingers, you blink and you miss it. So we have to be vigilant and protect our democracy at all costs. And that starts with protecting our voting rights and getting out and getting engaged and making sure every voice is heard and every community is represented.
My God, I get goosebumps practically just hearing you and seeing you, Josh. We've been friends for a long time, and whether or not we talk on a daily basis or not, for years and years and years will go by, I know that you are doing what you do best and doing what you are so passionate about, and that is serving the state of Arkansas. Of course, with all the experiences, with everything that you've gone through, the private jobs or everything that you've done for Momel, for Little Rock, I know that you will get that Secretary of State badge. And of course, from the bottom of our hearts, along with the people who are watching, that who would vote for you if you run if you run for president, probably.
Oh, wow. Maybe one
Well, I
day.
can see that. I can see that you're running for a higher office, and we would like to wish you well, of course, on behalf of Basilia Women's Foundation, of course, Get Real TV. You know that you all have our support, and whatever it is that you need from our side and from our end, you know that I'm always here for you to support
Thank you.
with whatever it is that you're fighting. We wish you good luck. And please keep us updated, of course, whether in the show or send me a private message if there is anything that you would like to send the message across. Please, use our venue to help us campaign for you, and I hope to visit you someday
Absolutely.
when you're doing your oath of office, diba?
Right.
Please say goodbye in Ilonggo to people, and I am glad that you are out here with me for this episode. Mag Ilonggo ka naman.
All right. Well, salamat ginyo madamo sa inyo suporta sa akon. Thank you so much for having me. And if you want to stay in touch with my campaign, you could follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Josh for Arkansas. And my website is joshforarkansas.com. So Josh for Arkansas, really easy to find. Thank you so much. Mabuhay.
Ayan. Thank you so much, Josh. I'll let you go. I know you're very busy while I finish my show. I don't want to keep you on the line, but all the best. We'll hope to see you one day when you take your oath of office, and send my love and regards to your mom and dad and to your sister.
I will. Thank you so much.
Ayan. There goes Mr. Joshua Ang Price, of course, running for the Secretary of State. I don't know if I am still there. Ayan. All right. There goes Mr. Joshua Ang Price, of course, a very proud Filipino American, bringing with him the flag and pride of the Filipinos, representing, us in the state of Arkansas. We wish you well, Josh. But at the same time, guys, I would like to thank everyone who tuned in. Of course, Miss Marilu Doliente watching alongside with our super friends, Mr. King, who is actually at work right now. Thank you so much, Annalie Gandeza, of course, Feli Elfen, and Mr. Rafi and Don Quartz, and of course, our super friend captain, Mr. Tyler D, Mami Ravena Naya, Bebeng Aranyador. Ayan, ang dami ko na sa inyo nabate. Mr. King Albert, Len Skinel, and so much more. If I cannot see you guys, I might probably not be able to see your comments, but everybody who's watching from the Philippines and of course in the United States, that makes us really proud to be Filipinos. And we also hope that because the Philippines is already starting to campaign for the next president, we also hope with this very inspirational interview that we had with Mr. Joshua Ang Price, that we will have our voters' rights and let the voices of the people to be heard and elect the proper candidate to run the nation of the Philippines. It has been a great evening with you guys. This is Jeanette Marco reporting, of course, and signing off for Get Real TV. Give love, give smile to everyone so that you get them back in return. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening.
It's time to get real. Get real. Talking about the things you wanna hear. It's time to get real. Get real. We got it all right here. It's time to get real. Get real. Better buckle up, get set. It's time to get real. Get real. We got it all right here. Come on. Whoa. Whoa.
is your Filipino radio experience in Las Vegas. PHLV Radio.